The Poles almost slaughtered 30,000 Mongols in the year 1241. Central Europe faced one of the most feared military forces in history. The Mongol Empire, expanding rapidly across Asia and Eastern Europe, had already destroyed powerful cities and defeated armies that once seemed unbeatable. From the ruins of Kiev to the devastated lands of the Rus principalities, their advance appeared unstoppable. When Mongol forces moved toward Poland, many believed the same fate awaited the region. At that time, Poland was not a unified kingdom, but a collection of separate principalities ruled by different dukes. Coordination between them was difficult, and gathering a large army quickly was almost impossible. Yet, this fragmented structure also allowed local commanders to react quickly and defend their own territories. As Mongol columns entered Polish lands, smaller Polish units began observing the movements carefully. Scouts tracked the invaders, studied their tactics, and learned how they operated. The Mongols relied heavily on speed, mounted archers, and open terrain where their mobility could dominate the battlefield. Polish commanders realized they could not defeat such an army using traditional methods. Instead of confronting them directly on open ground, they planned something different. Near the town of Chmielnik in Lesser Poland, local leaders organized an ambush designed to exploit the terrain and the strength of their own troops. The surrounding area of forests, hills, and narrow passages made it difficult for large cavalry formations to maneuver freely. The Polish force was much smaller than the Mongol column moving through the region. Estimates suggest between 5,000 and 8,000 warriors, many of them heavily armored knights, supported by infantry and archers. What they lacked in numbers, they hoped to compensate for with preparation, timing, and coordination. The plan relied on deception. A small Polish detachment was intentionally placed where Mongol scouts could spot them. The goal was to create the impression that Polish forces were gathering in a disorganized and vulnerable formation, confident from their earlier victories across Eastern Europe. The Mongol commanders saw an opportunity to eliminate what they believed was a manageable opponent. Unaware of the trap forming around them, the Mongol army advanced toward the valley near Chmielnik. Hidden in the surrounding forests were the main Polish forces. Cavalry units waited on both flanks, infantry blocked potential escape routes, and archers took positions on higher ground. Every group had a specific role in the unfolding plan. When the Mongol column moved into the valley and began forming its battle lines, the trap was triggered. From one side of the forest, Polish heavy cavalry surged forward in a powerful charge. Armored knights on war horses drove straight into the flank of the Mongol formation before it had fully organized. Moments later, another cavalry force struck from the opposite side, creating pressure on both flanks at once. The sudden attack disrupted the Mongol deployment. Units that expected to control the battlefield with mobility found themselves fighting in confined terrain against heavily armored opponents. The battle quickly became chaotic. Polish cavalry units coordinated repeated strikes against weak points in the Mongol formation, while infantry blocked routes through the forest that might have allowed an orderly withdrawal. Archers from the hills added additional pressure by targeting units attempting to regroup. For hours, the fighting continued. The Mongol commanders attempted to reorganize their forces and restore order within their ranks. Small groups of experienced warriors formed defensive circles and tried to push outward, but the surrounding Polish forces maintained constant pressure. Gradually, the Mongol formation began to break apart. By the middle of the battle, large sections of the invading army had been surrounded and isolated. What began as a confident advance turned into a struggle for survival as units fought to escape the tightening ring around them. Polish commanders could see that a remarkable victory was within reach. Reports from the battlefield suggested that the Mongol army had already suffered heavy losses. Many of the surviving warriors were exhausted, wounded, or separated from their commanders. If the encirclement closed completely, the entire Mongol column might be destroyed. However, one final moment would shape how the battle ended. A remaining Mongol force, consisting of some of their most experienced riders, gathered for a desperate breakthrough attempt. They targeted a section of the Polish line, defended mainly by infantry rather than heavy cavalry. At that critical moment, the Polish commander faced a difficult decision. He could commit his last fresh cavalry reserves to close the gap and attempt complete destruction of the enemy force. But those reserves were also needed for future battles, including the approaching confrontation near Legnica, where a larger coalition army was forming. Choosing caution, he held the reserve cavalry in place. The Mongol group managed to break through the infantry line and escape the encirclement, though at great cost. Only a small portion of the original army succeeded in leaving the battlefield. Despite that escape, the outcome was still extraordinary. Out of roughly 30,000 Mongol warriors who entered the battle, the vast majority were lost during the fight. Polish forces suffered losses as well, but the difference in scale was dramatic. The Mongol column was effectively destroyed as a fighting force. Yet history would remember another battle instead. Only weeks later, a larger clash occurred at Legnica, where the Mongols defeated a European coalition led by Duke Henry II of Silesia. That defeat overshadowed the earlier Polish success, and the Battle of Chmielnik gradually faded from broader historical memory. Still, the events of that day carried an important message. For the first time in the Mongol campaign in Europe, a local army had used terrain, planning, and coordination to nearly eliminate an entire Mongol force in open battle. It showed that the seemingly unstoppable army could be challenged when commanders adapted their strategy and used their strengths wisely. The Battle of Chmielnik remains a powerful reminder that preparation and leadership can sometimes overcome even the most feared military machines.